I hope you had a good nap, because today we're getting out of the crib and Among the Sleep. Among the Sleep is a whole puzzle game, very light horror, not super spooky. Honestly, I would count Five Nights at Freddy's as far spookier than this, in my opinion, but it has light horror elements, a little hide and seek, stealthy kind of segments. But Among the Sleep, you play as a 2-year-old child on his birthday with his mother. And they get interrupted with a knock at the door, and the mother goes and gets in an argument with someone at the door and comes back with a gift. The mother puts the child and the gift in the room and gets a phone call and leaves you be and goes answer the phone. In the meantime, you open your gift to find you got a teddy bear. The teddy bear comes to life and introduces itself as Teddy, and so the journey begins. That night, after experiencing a tutorial mode with Teddy, Teddy will play with you some and has a interactive tutorial mode. But later that night, going to sleep with Teddy, a shadowy figure comes to your crib and takes Teddy away, and you begin your journey in finding Teddy and what's going on in the house as the shadowy figure stalks you throughout the game. You'll find Teddy pretty early on, and he adds to the mechanics of the game. So you play as a 2-year-old, so you have some limitations. You can run around, but sometimes when you run too long, you'll trip and fall and into a crawling mode. Now you can get right back up and continue on 2 feet, but crawling around can have its advantages too. Of course, you can get into tight crawl spaces, but you want to have pretty decent speed crawling as well. So, unless you really need to be on your 2 feet, you can actually move about like that. You can interact with a lot of objects, grab them, and throw them about and such, which will be useful because sometimes you will have to move things like chairs and that, so you can climb up, pull dresser drawers out for stairwells to get to higher places and opening doors. But there are lots of meaningless random items that have no need or rhyme or reason to be able to interact with them, so they added a lot of stuff you can mess with, which helps add a little touch because you're a 2-year-old, so you want to mess around and mess around with stuff. Wow. Now, Teddy himself adds the gameplay feature of hugging him. When you bring Teddy out and hug him, he produces light. Now, there are areas in the game that are dark, so obviously Teddy is useful for that. You can't run while using Teddy, though, so keep that in mind if you're in a dangerous situation. Now, I played through the original version of Among the Sleep on the PS4. There is an enhanced edition that added a museum stage that goes over designs for a lot of the things in the games, things that were scrapped, original ideas, and even a ending that was made that was scrapped that isn't really clearly stated whether it was supposed to be a bad ending or the only ending in the original idea of the game of that. But there's a lot of nice little touches in it. The original console release did come with the Prologue DLC that was for free with the PC version. So whether you get the enhanced or original version of the console games, they all have the Prologue on them physically, but they don't have the museum data. Now, nicely, and this is something you don't usually see very often here, is a lot of times when devs make these kind of enhanced bell versions on consoles, a lot of times they expect you to buy it again. I have to give some props to the developers of Among the Sleep. Believe me, it's very hard to not say Among Us. Among the Sleep is that they gave this update this enhanced edition for free to original BIOS on PC and on console. So I actually was able to update to the enhanced edition and experience the museum mode myself, which it was interesting to see some of the thought process and some of the original ideas the game was going to be before it came what it is now. But basically, through the game, you're going to have the main goal of looking for 4 memories with your mother, because your mother goes missing. So Teddy accompanies you through weird, dreamish stages, looking for these treasures so you can find what happened to your mother and what the shadowy thing that is after you. I do like the twist and the idea of the story. When you look in the museum mode, that was not the original intent of the game, but it was a decision they had as a development team to go in that direction because they felt like that was a interesting topic to make the game about, which we'll get into in the story. Now, as I mentioned, there is a prologue that also takes place before the base game that was given for free with PC and is on all the physical console versions of the game. The prologue plays just a little bit different from the main story. The controls and everything are the same, but you're stuck in a small house as opposed to going through kind of these dreamish, weird worlds that you do in the main game. And your objective in the prologue is to free these stuffed animals you have that are freezing throughout the house. It does set up the beginning of what ends up creating the situation that the twist of the story is, so it does fulfill its job, but it's just kind of more of a side distraction thing. Just a little bit more of the game if you really like the game, but nothing too mind-boggling. The game does not feature any real replay outside of looking for drawings. There are drawings you can find, and these drawings are useful for helping give you an idea with the story, because overall, you're not really told the story to your face. A lot of it is interpreted through what you see and how you think the child is interpreting the world. Because remember, you're a 2-year-old, so you're seeing the world very differently from an adult. But overall, I did like Among the Sleep, and I would give it a value score of $10, which is a little bit lower than what its base price is. Digitally, it's $14.99 digitally, and for the physical editions, they're between about $19 to $24, depending on where you go and version you get. Not a huge difference, but honestly, if it wasn't for the puzzles and some of the running and hiding that the game has from the creatures you run into, the game would practically be a walking sim because it's very linear in how it's designed. And I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it, but I think especially paying like $20+ for digital. Obviously, like I said, physically, I've said once, I said again, it's kind of hard to expect companies to sell something lower than $19.99 physically. That's kind of regardless of what you think the game should be. I think if you want a physical version, that's what you have to bear. But I would personally recommend trying to get the game around $10. I did enjoy it, but I don't feel like there's enough here to justify a higher price tag. But that is just me. The Enhanced Edition, like I said, does add some nice additions to understanding what the developers were doing with the game before and after. What they were originally doing and what became in the final product. So it's a nice little addition. And then basically, if you get the original physical version for consoles, the only thing you're not getting is the museum and different pajamas. Though, to note, it does advertise that there are new lines in the Enhanced Edition. I couldn't find any of these new lines, but I did not replay the entirety of the game just to see if there was any lines that were different. As far as I can tell, there's nothing crazy different, but I didn't go through the whole game. I went through a few little parts and I didn't notice anything that seemed radically different, but it does note that, so I just want to throw that in now. If there are some lines that are different, they don't seem likely to be anything that's majorly different. Maybe they touched up on a few lines, maybe in a proofreading sense, maybe, but either version can do, it just depends on how complete you want it. And the game is available DRM free, and which is very nice, considering I actually did own this game on GOG, and that was freely upgraded to the Enhanced Edition as well. So, you got DRM free, Steam, PC, why did I you got DRM free Steam on PC, then it's also on PS4, Xbox One, and Switch. So you got basically on all the prime evils of the gaming market, yeah? So you can always wait for a sale if you want to go low, or if you want physically, it's not really hard to get. You can still find brand new copies, you can find used copies and such, so it's pretty out there on that. So let's get into spoilers then. Shall we? So, spoilery wise, I do appreciate the direction the Kratos went with the game. I think it's an interesting subject to actually go into about abusive parents. And the mother, you find out the monster is the mother when she's in a drunken rage, and it's interesting that the child doesn't actually realize that the mother and the monster are separate entities for a large chunk of the game. It's kind of interesting. It really is, as I said, looking through the world from the perspective of a 2-year-old. Because when you get to the final stage where you return back to your normal house, if you look around the environment, which is just destroyed, the house is in shambles everywhere, things are knocked over everywhere, but you'll find many of the things you solved, puzzles and items from the different worlds you went to, in the house, which indicates that the entire journey was really just in the house. But since it was nighttime after a bunch of spooky shit, the child was interpreting what they were seeing very differently. And that was an intention the developers wanted. They wanted you to see how the child may view different objects, you know. They might view a coat as a strange monster, where you're just like, it's a long coat. The prologue, like I said, is, well, a prologue, and it does bring a little light to how the parents broke up. And some people have interpreted a few of the scenes differently in the prologue, so it's not 100% sure whether the father is also in the wrong with the mother, or if the father might have been protecting the child from the mother. I have seen a few people make that claim, but there's not really any hard evidence that I've seen that truly supports that the mother was being abusive to the child during the events of the prologue. But obviously, in the main game, the mother has been abusive to the child. So the Kratos basically wanted to show that when a couple gets divorced, it's not really as easy as, like, they're the good one, they're the bad one. There's a lot of nuance to what happens during a divorce and what was the problem and such. It can vary greatly, and that's kind of what the developers were going for, is trying to not really make anyone a particular good guy or a bad guy. It's just divorce is complicated and it's not easy. But the prologue explains how that started and that, and I like that. Now, the museum featured a scrapped ending, which actually had Teddy being the antagonist of the series. Originally, apparently, they wanted the story to be made where the child was being lured more deeper into these dreams, and then Teddy would reveal themselves to be like some kind of like god of nightmares or something that feeds off of children. Now, whether this was going to be the only ending or alternate ending or something is unknown, so it's not really any information on that Stormfront. But basically, they wanted it to go a really dark path. But sometime in development, they decided they wanted to go with the more serious subject about the parental abuse, and I do think that featured a interesting choice though, because I think at the end of the day the story is the main draw with this game. Like I said, it has light puzzle elements in that, but it's nothing really hard at all. Honestly, most people should find this pretty basic puzzle. Among the Sleep's okay game. I don't think it's a terrible game by any means. I did run into a few weird problems. Nothing that hindered me or stopped me from being able to continue. There were just a weird clippings once in a while, like way at the start of the game for me. My character actually sunk into the floor, and it gave me a really out of bounds perspective for a while before my character relined back into the proper location of the environment. So the game's not 100% perfect, but certainly playable. I've certainly played games with a lot more problems, like New Vegas, Fallout New Vegas. Lots of weird bugs getting weirder and weirder in that game. So it's a pretty competent game of that. I recommend it if you can find it for a decent price, but I wouldn't lose any sleep over it. But it's not an expensive game either way, so you should be able to find it pretty cheap, whether it be a PC sale or just getting the physical version at a cheaper price. But those are my thoughts on Among the Sleep. It's an okay little game, nothing absolutely mind-boggling, but I can recommend it if you want a interesting story about the perspective of the world from a 2-year-old. So, those are my thoughts. If you feel like you learned anything interesting, please feel free to leave a like. And if you feel like you learned nothing at all, feel free to leave a dislike. Feel free. And until next time, I'm going back to sleep. This 11-hour shift stuff at work sucks. I gotta get some more beauty sleep, so get those nightmares away here. Let me get Foxy over here. Just scare all those nightmares away, won't you, Foxy?